The ancient monitors flickered to life, their arctic displays sputtering with long-dormant energy. Deep within the shadowed fortress, alarms wailed. A symphony of forgotten warnings that had not sounded in millennia. Silas jolted awake, his heart pounding. He stumbled from his cot, snatching up his sidearm as he raced to the command deck. The air crackled with static. It was as if the very atmosphere had come alive. "What's happening?" he demanded, bursting through the doors. His second in command, Akira, stood rigid at the main console, her fingers flying across the Arctic controls. "We've detected a massive energy spike near the outer perimeter," she reported, her voice terse. "Whatever it is, it's unlike anything we've encountered before." Silas felt a chill run down his spine. Their outpost had remained hidden and untouched for generations. How could anything have breached their defenses? "Bring up the external feeds," he ordered. The main view screen flickered, and Silas sucked in a sharp breath. A colossal vessel hung in the void, its sleek silhouette unlike any ship they had ever seen. Cascades of energy pulsed along its hull, and Silas knew instinctively that this was no ordinary craft. "Get me a visual analysis," he snapped. Akira's fingers flew, and a detailed schematic appeared on the screen. Silas studied it, his jaw tightening. "It's an interstellar warship," he murmured, his mind racing. "And it's unlike anything in our archives." Akira's eyes widened. "That's impossible. All the great fleets were lost millennia ago. How could this be here, now?" Silas shook his head grimly. "I don't know, but we can't let it get any closer." He turned to the comm officer. "Hail that vessel. Demand they identify themselves and state their intentions." The crackle of static was his only reply. Silas felt a chill of dread. Why aren't they responding? Akira's face was pale. I'm not detecting any communication signals from their ship. It's as if they're not even trying to make contact." Silas' grip tightened on his sidearm. "Then prepare for battle. We can't let that thing reach the planet." The crew scrambled to their stations, their faces grim. Silas stared out at the looming vessel, his heart pounding. After so long, the ghosts of the past had returned, and this time they would not go down without a fight. The massive warship loomed ever closer, its formidable presence casting the outpost into shadow. Silas gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. "Weapons systems online and ready," Akira reported, her voice tight with tension. "Shields at maximum." Silas nodded, his jaw set. "Open a channel. One last chance for them to stand down." The comm officer's fingers danced across the controls, but the speakers remained silent. Silas felt a surge of frustration. "They're not responding. It's as if they don't even hear us." Akira's eyes narrowed. Or they simply don't care. Silas took a deep breath, steeling himself. Then so be it. All batteries, fire at will. The outpost's cannons erupted in a blaze of energy, lancing out towards the looming vessel. But to Silas' dismay, the shots seemed to have no effect. The warship's shields held firm, shrugging off the assault. "Impossible," Akira cried. "Our weapons should be tearing through their defenses." Silas gritted his teeth. "Then we'll have to get closer. Helm, bring us in for a direct attack run." The outpost engines roared to life, propelling them towards the massive warship. Silas braced himself, his finger poised on the trigger. "Wait for my order," he growled. "We've only got one shot at this." The distance between the two vessels rapidly closed, the warship's sheer size and power overwhelming the tiny outpost. Silas felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Now," he barked. The cannons unleashed another salvo, the air shuddering with the force of the barrage. But again, the warship's shields held firm, shrugging off the assault as if it were nothing. Silas' eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. A sudden flash of light erupted from the warship's hull, and Silas had just enough time to register the incoming threat before a bolt of pure energy lanced out, slamming into the outpost's shields. The entire structure shuddered, and Silas was thrown to the deck as the lights flickered and died. Silas groaned, struggling to his feet amidst the chaos. Alarms blared, and acrid smoke filled the air. "Report." He coughed, staggering towards the main console. Akira's face was pale, her hands trembling as she scanned the damage readouts. "Our shields are down to 30% and failing fast. That last shot." Silas cursed under his breath. "What kind of weapon is that?" "I've never seen anything like it," Akira admitted, her voice tinged with fear. "It's as if they're harnessing pure energy to devastate our defenses." Silas gripped the edge of the console, his mind racing. Their outpost was no match for the sheer firepower of the alien warship. They were outmatched, outgunned, and running out of time. "Can we at least disable their weapons?" he demanded. Akira shook her head grimly. "Not with what we have. Their shields are impenetrable, and their main cannon—" She trailed off, the unspoken fear hanging in the air. Silas felt a chill run down his spine. If that weapon was as powerful as it seemed, then the entire outpost, and perhaps the entire planet, was in grave danger. "Then we have no choice," Silas growled. "We have to evacuate. Get the civilians to the emergency shuttles now." Akira's eyes widened. "But the planet." "We can't hold them off." Silas cut her off, his voice strained. "If that thing gets through, it'll level the entire colony. We have to buy them time to escape." Akira opened her mouth to protest, but Silas silenced her with a glare. "That's an order, Lieutenant. Get them to safety, no matter what." Akira's shoulders slumped, but she nodded grimly. "Understood, sir." She turned to the comm officer, barking out orders. Silas watched as the crew sprang into action, their faces grim and resolute. Gripping his sidearm, Silas turned back to the main view screen, his eyes narrowing as he stared down the looming warship. This was no longer a battle they could win, but he would be damned if he let that thing reach the planet without a fight. The evacuation shuttles streaked away from the outpost, their engines burning bright against the void. Silas watched them go, his heart heavy. "All civilians are away, sir," Akira reported, her voice tinged with sorrow. "But the warship is still advancing." Silas nodded, his jaw set. "Then we'll have to hold them off as long as we can." He turned to the weapons officer, his eyes narrowed. "Concentrate all remaining firepower on their main cannon. If we can disable that, maybe we can buy the shuttles more time." The crew sprang into action, their fingers flying across the consoles. The outpost's remaining batteries unleashed a barrage of energy, pounding relentlessly against the warship's shields. But to Silas' growing frustration, the assault seemed to have little effect. The warship's defenses held firm, shrugging off the barrage as if it were nothing. "It's no use," the weapons officer cried. "Our weapons can't penetrate their shields." Silas gritted his teeth, his knuckles whitening on the edge of the console. They were running out of options and time. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the warship's hull, and Silas knew instinctively what was coming. "Brace for impact," he roared, diving for cover. The outpost shuddered as the alien cannon's blast slammed into their weakened shields, the energy tearing through the structure like a hot knife through butter. Silas was thrown to the deck, his ears ringing from the deafening roar. When the dust settled, the main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the grim reality. The outpost's defenses were in ruins, its once proud silhouette now little more than a smoldering wreck. Silas dragged himself to his feet, his heart sinking. "How much time do we have?" Akira's face was grim. "The shuttles are still too close. If that thing fires again, they won't have a chance." Silas clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were out of options, out of time. But he refused to let those civilians be slaughtered, not while he still drew breath. "Then we'll have to buy them more time," he growled, leveling his sidearm. Prepare to launch all remaining missiles. We're going to make that bastard pay." The outpost's remaining missiles streaked towards the looming warship, their warheads burning bright against the void. Silas watched, his jaw set, as the barrage slammed into the alien vessel's shields. For a moment, the energy field wavered, the impacts shaking the warship's hull. But then, to Silas' dismay, the shield stabilized, and the missiles simply dissipated against the impenetrable barrier. Impossible. Akira breathed, her face ashen. Nothing we have can even scratch their defenses. Silas clenched his fists, his frustration mounting. They were down to their last reserves, and the warship showed no signs of slowing. The civilians were still too close, and if that thing fired again, they would be slaughtered. "Then we'll have to get its attention," he growled, his eyes narrowing. "Helm, take us in for a direct attack run." Akira's eyes widened. "Sir, that's suicide. We won't last 10 seconds against that kind of firepower." Silas met her gaze, his expression grim. "I know, but it's the only way to buy the shuttles enough time to escape." Akira opened her mouth to protest, but the look in Silas' eyes silenced her. She nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "Understood, sir," she murmured, turning to the helm. "Set a course for the warship's main cannon. All ahead full." The outpost engines roared to life, the tiny vessel hurtling towards the looming alien craft. Silas braced himself, his finger poised on the trigger of his sidearm. "This is for the colony," he whispered, his eyes burning with determination. "May the gods have mercy on our souls." The distance closed rapidly, the warship's sheer size and power overwhelming the tiny outpost. Silas could feel the tension in the air, the weight of their sacrifice pressing down on them all. As they drew within range, the warship's cannon began to glow, its power building. Silas gritted his teeth, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Come on, you bastard," he growled. "Let's see what you've got." The cannon erupted in a blinding flash of light, and Silas knew no more. Aboard the fleeing evacuation shuttles, the watching civilians could only stare in horror as the outpost was engulfed in a brilliant explosion. The shockwave rippled through the void, rattling the fragile craft as they raced to escape the devastation. Akira gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. She had watched helplessly as Silas and the rest of the crew made their final, desperate stand. Their sacrifice had bought the civilians the time they needed, but at an unimaginable cost. As the shuttles continued their frantic flight, Akira turned her gaze back towards the smoldering wreckage of the outpost. The warship hung there, its imposing silhouette a chilling reminder of the power they now faced. "What are we going to do?" one of the civilians asked, his voice trembling with fear. Akira took a deep breath, her mind racing. They had lost their home, their defenses, and their bravest soldiers. But they couldn't give up. Not now. "We regroup," she said, her voice steady. "We find a way to warn the rest of the colonies, and we prepare for their return." The civilians murmured in agreement, their faces a mix of grim determination and lingering horror. Akira knew they were all thinking the same thing. How could they possibly stand against such a formidable foe? "But how?" another civilian asked, her voice laced with despair. "That thing tore through our defenses like they were nothing. What chance do we have?" Akira met the woman's gaze, her expression hardening. "We're human," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "And we've never been known for our predictability. We'll find a way to fight back, no matter the cost." The civilians fell silent, their faces filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. Akira turned her attention back to the view screen, her mind racing. They had lost their home, their friends, and their beloved commander. But the fight was far from over. Humanity had faced overwhelming odds before, and they had always found a way to prevail. This time would be no different. Akira would make sure of it. As the evacuation shuttles raced through the void, Akira's mind whirled with a maelstrom of emotions. Grief, rage, and determination all battled for dominance, fueling her resolve to find a way to strike back against the alien menace. She had witnessed firsthand the devastating power of the warship's main cannon, a weapon that had effortlessly torn through the outpost's defenses. The memory of the brilliant flash and the shuddering impact sent a chill down her spine. If that thing managed to reach the colonies, the carnage would be unimaginable. But Akira refused to let that happen. Silas had given his life to buy them time, and she would not let that sacrifice be in vain. Somehow, someway, they would find a way to stop the invaders. "Lieutenant," a voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see one of the civilian technicians, his face etched with worry. "The shuttles are running low on fuel," he reported. "At this rate, we won't be able to reach the nearest colony before we run dry." Akira's jaw tightened. That was the last thing they needed. Stranded in the void, they would be easy pickings for the warship's devastating firepower. "Can we divert power from the life support systems to extend our range?" she asked, her mind racing. The technician shook his head. "It'll buy us some time, but not enough. We need to find a way to refuel." Akira's eyes narrowed as an idea began to take shape. "What about the old fuel depots? The ones we used to resupply the outpost?" The technician's eyes widened. "Of course. If any of them are still operational, we might be able to refuel and get to safety." Akira nodded, a glimmer of hope in her gaze. "Patch me through to the other shuttles. We need to coordinate a search pattern and get there as quickly as possible." As the technician relayed the orders, Akira turned her attention back to the viewscreen. The smoldering wreckage of the outpost was still visible in the distance, a silent testament to the sacrifices they had already made. "Hang on, Silas," she murmured, her fists clenching. "We're not done yet." With renewed determination, Akira set course for the old fuel depots, praying that they would find the supplies they needed to escape the alien warship's clutches. The evacuation shuttles raced through the void, their engines straining as they searched for the elusive fuel depots. Akira's eyes were glued to the scanners, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. If they couldn't find a way to refuel, they would be stranded, easy prey for the looming alien warship that had decimated their outpost. The memory of that devastating cannon blast still sent shivers down her spine, and she knew they needed to put as much distance between themselves and that monstrous vessel as possible. Suddenly, a faint blip appeared on the scanners, and Akira felt a surge of relief. There, one of the old fuel stations is still operational. "Bring us in, full burn." The shuttles lurched forward, their engines roaring as they raced towards the lone beacon of hope. Akira gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white, as they drew closer and closer. "We're lining up with the docking port," the pilot reported, his voice tense. "Commencing final approach." Akira held her breath as the shuttles pulled alongside the aging fuel depot, the docking clamps engaging with a shudder. "Get those fuel lines connected now," she barked. The crew sprang into action, their fingers flying across the controls. Akira watched anxiously, her eyes darting back towards the distant horizon, searching for any sign of the alien warship. "Fuel transfer in progress," the technician reported, his voice tinged with relief. "We should be able to top off the tanks in a matter of minutes." Akira nodded, her mind racing. "As soon as we're refueled, set a course for the nearest colony. We need to warn them about what's coming." The crew murmured in agreement, their faces grim. Akira knew they were all thinking the same thing. How could they possibly stand against such a formidable foe? But as the fuel lines hummed with fresh energy, Akira felt a glimmer of hope take root in her heart. They might have lost the outpost and Silas, but they were still alive. And they would find a way to fight back, no matter the cost. "Hang on, Silas," she whispered, her eyes burning with determination. "We're coming for them." As the shuttles prepared to depart, Akira cast one last glance towards the distant horizon, her jaw set. The alien warship might have won this battle, but the war had only just begun.